The war in Ukraine has left Russia more isolated than at any point since the end of the Cold War, pushing the country into a desperate search for new allies and sources of support. As the conflict drags on, Moscow finds itself increasingly cut off from the West, both diplomatically and economically. What began as a swift military operation, expected to last only days or weeks, has instead become a costly, grinding conflict with no clear end in sight. The toll on both sides has been immense, and the war has fundamentally altered Russia's place in the world. Western sanctions have crippled Russia's economy, cutting off access to global markets, technology, and investment. Everyday Russians feel the impact through rising prices, shortages, and a shrinking job market. Facing these pressures, Moscow has been forced to look beyond its traditional partners. Old alliances with Europe and the United States have all but vanished. In their place, Rukuri Troter Bucken, Worken, Redanver, Wajau, Wujustan Shur Kosher Button Sen, Shurtoter Beinberber Braffenfer. Russia is now building pragmatic, transactional relationships with countries that share its opposition to the West, or are willing to overlook the war in Ukraine for their own benefit. The most important of these new partners are China and North Korea, two nations that have their own reasons for deepening ties with Moscow. For Russia, these relationships are a lifeline. China offers a vast market for Russian energy exports, helping to keep Russia's oil and gas industries afloat despite Western embargoes. In return, China gains access to discounted resources and increased influence over its northern neighbor. Meanwhile, North Korea supplies desperately needed ammunition and military equipment, providing crucial support for Russia's war effort as its own stockpiles dwindle. These deals, however, come at a high price. Russia is making significant concessions, economic, political, and even territorial influence, to secure these partnerships, raising questions about its long-term sovereignty and independence. Once a great power that dictated terms to its neighbors, Russia now finds itself increasingly dependent on its eastern partners, relying on trade routes and supply lines that run through Asia. The choices made today are reshaping not only Russia's global standing, but also the broader geopolitical map of Eurasia. The balance of power is shifting, with consequences that extend far beyond the battlefield. The story of Russia's desperate deals is ultimately one of survival, a nation struggling to adapt to a new reality, making decisions that will echo for generations to come, and redefining what it means to be a power in the modern world. In the wake of Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine, the world watched as Western nations responded with unprecedented speed and unity. Sanctions were rolled out almost overnight, targeting the very foundations of Russia's economy and its ability to wage war. Russia found itself abruptly cut off from global finance and technology. International banks froze assets, credit card networks suspended operations, and the ruble plummeted in value. Ordinary Russians faced uncertainty as ATMs ran dry, and businesses struggled to adapt. The impact rippled through Russia's military-industrial complex. Once a symbol of national pride and power, factories that produced everything from tanks to microchips suddenly found themselves unable to source critical components. Assembly lines ground to a halt, and shelves for imported electronics sat empty. Beyond the defense sector, the broader economy suffered. Factories faced severe shortages, and the loss of lucrative European markets for oil and gas slashed government revenue. Energy exports, once the lifeblood of the Russian budget, dwindled as pipelines to the west ran dry. The costs of war soared, straining the government's finances. Sanctions made it increasingly difficult to pay for military operations, public services, and even basic imports. Russian officials scrambled to stabilize the economy as inflation and uncertainty grew. Facing isolation from the West, President Putin was forced to look elsewhere for support. He sought out partners willing to defy Western pressure, hoping to secure new sources of trade, investment, and military cooperation. This pivot to the east was no longer just a strategic choice, it became a matter of national survival. Russia began to reorient its economy and diplomacy toward Asia, forging new connections and seeking lifelines wherever they could be found. But diplomatic gestures were not enough. Russia urgently needed economic and military lifelines, access to goods, technology, and capital that could keep its economy afloat and its military supplied. China and North Korea stepped in to fill the void, offering what the West had denied. Chinese cargo ships began arriving at Russian ports, and North Korean officials engaged in high-level talks, signaling a new era of cooperation. These new alliances, however, came with their own risks and conditions. Moscow had little choice but to accept the terms, even as it meant growing dependence on its new partners and a loss of leverage on the world stage. In the end, Western sanctions didn't just punish Russia, they forced it to seek out new allies, reshaping the global balance of power and setting the stage for a new era of international relations. To secure China's support, Russia has made unprecedented concessions, the most striking leasing 1 million hectares of Siberian land to China for 70 years. This gives Beijing a major economic foothold in Russia's Far East. Russia also resolved a border dispute by transferring part of Bolshoi-Ussuriysky Island to China. These moves signal Russia's willingness to sacrifice sovereignty for survival. In return, China buys Russian energy and supplies essential goods, helping Moscow withstand sanctions. The deals cement a strategic alignment, but at a steep cost. Russia is mortgaging its future for present support, raising questions about long-term sovereignty. Putin is betting that Chinese backing outweighs the risks of dependency. It's a high-stakes trade land and influence for loyalty in wartime. North Korea has become Russia's munitions lifeline. After a summit between Putin and Kim Jong-un, North Korea began shipping massive quantities of artillery shells to Russia. In exchange, Russia provides food, fuel, and advanced military technology. This partnership has transformed the battlefield in Ukraine, giving Russia a critical edge. The deal deepened with a mutual defense pact, binding the two countries closer than ever. Russia's transfer of military know-how to North Korea alarms the West, as it boosts Pyongyang's weapons programs. Putin is trading long-term security for short-term gains. Two isolated regimes now find common cause against the US and its allies. It's a desperate, dangerous bargain with global consequences. Russia's no-limits partnership with China is often described as a strategic alliance, but in reality, it is deeply unequal and increasingly lopsided. While both countries present a united front to the world, the balance of power is shifting unmistakably in Beijing's favor. With Western markets closed off due to sanctions, China has become Russia's primary buyer of oil and gas. However, this lifeline comes at a steep cost. China demands significant discounts, leveraging Russia's isolation to secure energy on its own terms. Moscow's economic dependence on Beijing grows deeper with every shipment. Russia, once a global power in its own right, now finds itself the junior partner in this relationship. Its economic survival is increasingly tied to China's willingness to buy, invest, and supply. The Kremlin's bargaining power has diminished, leaving it vulnerable to Beijing's demands. Nearly all critical components for Russia's war machine, electronics, machinery, and even basic supplies, now come from China. This reliance extends beyond the battlefield, affecting everything from infrastructure to consumer goods. As Chinese influence seeps into every corner of Russian society, Russia's identity is shifting. Once a proud European power, it now risks becoming little more than a shadow of China, its sovereignty increasingly compromised. Diplomatic and military cooperation between the two countries has intensified, with joint exercises and high-level meetings becoming more frequent. Yet, beneath the surface, mistrust and historical suspicions linger, preventing true partnership. For Putin, China's support is essential not just to sustain the war effort, but to maintain his grip on power at home. However, every concession to Beijing comes at the expense of Russia's independence and global standing. The so-called partnership has clear and unspoken limits, all of which are dictated by Beijing. Russia's room to maneuver is shrinking as it waits for China's decisions on every major issue. While Russia may have found a powerful friend in China, it is a friendship defined by dependence. The risk is clear. Moscow could become a vassal state, its fate increasingly tied to Beijing's ambitions. In the end, the price of survival for Russia may be nothing less than its own sovereignty, a trade-off that could reshape the balance of power in Eurasia for years to come. Not all Russians support these desperate deals. The leasing of Siberian land to China has sparked nationalist outrage, seen as a betrayal of Russian sovereignty. Critics argue Putin is sacrificing the nation's future for short-term war gains. The Far East's strategic importance and China's growing influence fuel anxiety. Some fear Russia is losing control over its own territory. Dissent is mostly muted, but the sentiment is real and growing. Putin's image as a strong leader is at risk if he's seen as trading away Russia's birthright. The deals meant to secure Russia's position may sow seeds of future instability. The Russia-China-North Korea partnership alarms the West. It's not a formal alliance, but a network of regimes united by opposition to the US-led order. Their cooperation, military, economic, and technological, poses a formidable challenge to global stability. Each pursues its own revisionist agenda, but together they can stretch Western resources and attention. Sanctions lose effectiveness when these states support each other. The axis creates a feedback loop of instability, with crises in one region enabling aggression in another. Russia's war in Ukraine, backed by its new allies, distracts and divides the West. This emerging bloc is more than the sum of its parts. It's a coordinated challenge to international norms. The world faces a new era of great power competition. The US and its allies have responded with new sanctions and intelligence sharing to disrupt the Russia-China-North Korea axis. These efforts have had limited success. Arms and technology continue to flow. Western alliances are strengthening, with NATO and Pacific partnerships reinvigorated. The strategy is containment and deterrence, aiming to show unity against further aggression. The world is now more divided, with rising risks of miscalculation and conflict. Russian technology transfers to North Korea raise fears of nuclear proliferation. Forced into a corner, Russia has traded sovereignty for survival, forging a new axis of autocracies. The world watches anxiously as this dangerous new dynamic unfolds.